Are you tired of getting your butt handed to you every single time you try to farm for a base in Rust? Are you constantly questioning how the hell you're supposed to compete with the clans of 37 megachads on every official server? Well, my friend, I am too. But today we overcome and we conquer these fears and find a way to thrive in the brutal world that is Rust. My path to redemption started out just like any other beginning to my solo wipes, farming barrels endlessly as a naked until I meet my ultimate untimely demise before I could get a base down. You're kidding me. This made me think, why am I constantly grinding monuments, farming roads, and trying to fight groups as a solo in this game? Look, I'm a pretty new Rust player with like 300 hours in playtime. Trying to grind for scrap, guns, and resources sucks when you constantly get gunned down while you're primlocked. So this time around, I went with a new approach. I decided to become a rootin' tootin' no-nonsense blue-collar farming man. Not only that, but a rich one. Let me tell you, I made so much scrap with this multifaceted farming strategy. Here's what I did. First things first, I needed to build near bandit camps so I could enact my devious monopolization farm plan. Did I say that right? So I decided to build on a river just a few tiles away from bandit on this server. Construction began. The foundations were now laid and the smell of profit was in the air. Let's get it started. The first and easiest part of this process was to acquire a horse, which only required 75 scrap at a nearby ranch. I built a little horse stable attached to my main house, filled the trough with food, and the horse started pooping. If you didn't know, horse poop equals money in Rust. All you need is a composter to turn the doo-doo into fertilizer, which you can then sell at bandit camp for horse loads of easy scrap. It's passive income. Horses always poop as long as they're fed and attached to a trough, even if you're offline. As my horses kept feeding on the infinitely respawning corn and pumpkins that grew on the riverbanks outside my abode, and as they kept on pooping, I was on the hunt for a large planter box so I could begin phase 2 of my plan. Eventually, my lovely girlfriend hopped on and decided to help me look for the comps I needed to get going. She also brought me another horse to double my poop production.
I died.
It took a bit of digging around, but eventually we acquired 2 large planter boxes and I placed them down inside my core. The way things were set up were, the top side of my 2x2 were set up for my TC, boxes, workbench, etc., while the bottom half would serve as my farm room. I would expand the house as needed for my horse house to set down my composter and other things as needed. And from there, I planted hemp seeds. That's right, I was going to be growing and selling cloth and rust for a profit. You see, hemp seeds are collected by harvesting the wild plants out in the world. And all this time, I've been grabbing every hemp bush I saw throughout the entire process, not only for easy cloth, but for seeds that I could later plant, genetically manipulate, and sell excess cloth to bandit camp for scrap. This process was a bit confusing for a beginner, but after watching a fantastic Jafar video about farming, genetics, and crossbreeding plants in Rust, I was getting a pretty good yield with my cloth plants. And once I was happy with the makeup of some of my plants, I would clone them rather than harvest them, which I could then use to make more and more and more and more and more of that genetic version of hemp plant and eventually harvest for big cloth yields. Over time, I grew enough cloth and produced enough fertilizer that I wanted to do a run to bandit on horseback and see what I could make in terms of scrap. The results were pretty shocking. Alright, so been here about 30-40 minutes. Sold like all of my cloth. Had 1k when I started. That got me about like 200, I think, scrap. And I've sold just about half the 1k fertilizer that I have, and I'm almost at 1k scrap. It's kind of nuts, dude. I repeated this process over and over again, selling fertilizer and cloth for at least 1k scrap per run. I was able to tech tree all the tier 1 items that I wanted, set up a tier 2 workbench, and add some electricity to the base for better farming, adding a heater to stabilize the temperature, lights for plant food, and using a bit of fertilizer that I was making for better soil quality. And my plants were super happy. All the while, my horses kept producing fertilizer. Money was just pouring in at this point, and I could do this process pretty much forever. Then I realized I was making these runs when it was quiet. What if the server was popping off a little bit more? I pretty much ignored this until I lost 500 scrap on a small run. No! Then I admitted to myself I needed an alternative delivery method for my scrap. I decided to set up a vending machine loaded with some trash for high scrap prices. Why? So that once I made it to Bandit Camp with my goods and sold them, I could literally just buy what I put into the vending machine with the scrap that I made and send it home safely to my vending machine. This then meant I could comfortably ride home with zero risk of losing what I earned. Perfect. But I wasn't satisfied. Soon, I realized I could make even more scrap per run. I noticed on one of my runs that you could sell corn for scrap as well as cloth and fertilizer. And by living on the riverfront, corn literally just spawns over and over again infinitely. AKA, the game is just spawning in free scrap outside my base. How could I not? So I continued runs like this for an entire weekend, collecting my farm and sitting at Bandit Camp selling and selling and selling and selling and selling and selling. This was by far the easiest way of progressing in Rust I've ever experienced, and I did things at a very, very small scale. Poop, cloth, and corn farming have tons of scrap potential, and if you have the time to grind Rust, but not the PvP skills or the numbers to compete with clans, this is a super simple way to speedrun the tech trees and upgrade to a tier 3 workbench very quickly, without having to go out on roams and risk dying with an inventory of farm. There's not much else to this video, but I hope you've enjoyed it. It was really fun exploring this side of Rust and learning the benefits of farming in the game, especially for a noob just trying to get some BPs for some PvP practice next week. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment telling me how bad I am at farming or something, and subscribe to see some more content in the future. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.